Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus. Hope you're having a fantastic day wherever in the world you are. Thanks for joining us on this channel where we talk about complex, metaphysical, supernatural subjects. And I don't think anything gets more complex than what we're talking about tonight. It is a nice evening here in Skopje, Macedonia. Don't mind the street sounds. This is pretty much the only place I can go to get some privacy in my hostel to do a couple of videos. But just think of it as if you're here with me in the Balkans. We're having some Turkish tea and discussing some of these metaphysical topics. So just think of the background noise as an ambiance. So in this video I want to go down a pretty weird rabbit hole and talk about something that has been on my mind, and it's one of those things where sometimes I hear things going into this field, the field of spirit communication, of learning about people's lives in other dimensions. That's the brunt of this work. It's the brunt of my books, like we have up on the screen right now, The Afterlife and Beyond, my most recent book, or Understanding Life After Death, here at the Afterlife Topics website. That is the brunt of it, it's understanding people's lives in other dimensions. That, number one, that it's possible, and that number two, what are the differences between our waking reality and our waking reality when our physical awareness body ends here and then we move to a different spectrum, a different dimension. But the thing is that I feel like it's my duty to report things even if it's weird, it doesn't make any sense, or it's controversial, because I'm just trying to get at the truth. So there's some things that I have been able to rule out. One of them is the idea that in the New Age circles that we die. I shouldn't be saying the D word because YouTube is going to censor me, but we pass away and then we become a non-physical orb of light, pure energy field. Some people, in my opinion, people who should know better, they deny the existence of physical realities beyond this one. They believe that anything after this life is going to be kind of a phantasm, or you're a ghost, you're floating around. You're pure energy. There's no longer a tangibility or a solidarity. It's all just dreamlike. And I've always resisted that idea because so much communication tells us the opposite, that it's like you shift in a gradient, you shift in a spectrum, you're on a new spectrum. It's less physical, but it doesn't mean that it's massively different from this world. I've pretty much run with that, but I'm beginning to wonder if it may be that I've underestimated just to what extent a different spectrum, a different dimension may be physical. And I've had some really weird experiences lately that have clued me in on a very unexpected topic. So hold on to your seats, because this is some weird stuff we're getting into. Before we go further, if you think this video is important, if you think these topics, which are not discussed in too many places, if you think it's important and it's needed, please go down, hit that subscribe button, hit that share button, that notification bell. Help support the work, or head on over to the Patreon page at patreon.com/Afterlife Topics, or even up here to Afterlife University. This is ways you can contribute, put a few bucks in a month. Pretty much helps me keep going with the community, the website, the books, the YouTube. Without your help, can't really keep going with all this. Okay, so to continue, I want to preface this a little bit by saying that when you delve into the topic of spirit communication, sometimes we encounter things that surprise us, and we also encounter this kind of wall. And the wall is, roughly speaking, when entities from, whether it's through mediumship or astral projection, or you're studying physical mediumship, you're studying spiritualism, you're going to the history books and you're reading people's accounts from people on the other side, you will often hear that there are things that they are not allowed to tell us, that they're not allowed to share with us, and nobody knows why. And there's even things that when people have NDEs, as an example, there's information that higher powers deem that we should not, that the human race should not be exposed to, and so that information is withheld. And this has always bothered me, because what is it that we're not supposed to know about. And I have a sense one of these topics is related to something really weird, which relates to the death or destruction of a person on the astral side. So it's always been my paradigm, my belief, my understanding that when we cross over into what we call the spirit world, we are indestructible entities. Nothing can harm us. We are, if not, we are still solid, but it is energy. Energy doesn't get destroyed. We are always who we are. Nothing can harm us. We can shape shift. We can have total freedom, do what we want, look like however we want. Yet the information that's been trickling in through various sources, including my own astral experiences, has been presenting a different perspective, at least about what we call the astral conditions that we go to when we cross over. Namely, that it's possible to incur physical destruction of your astral body, resulting in what they would refer to as death. So death happening on the astral plane as a result of physical destruction, as a result of, I don't know what it could be, jumping into a volcano or whatever could happen, or maybe just harboring a thought attachment where somebody still believes that they're sick and still believes that they're going to die, and then their physical astral body does indeed die. And what happens to them then? Do they go to a different gradient, a different layer of the so-called afterlife? That really doesn't make any sense. Now let me back up a little bit. I was first exposed to this topic when I was having an out-of-body experience, and I was confused because I was coming out of a sleep consciousness. I was in some random location, like on a street corner someplace on the astral plane, and I was calling out for my mother because when I appear on that side, usually I want to go see my mother, but my memories were all jumbled up. So I went up to some random person and I'm like, "Where is my mother? She died, but I want to see her here." And this guy was like, "Mate, when you're dead, you're dead." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" "Wait, I'm astral projecting. What do you mean by that?" And he's like, "You can die here just like you can die there. Don't fool yourself." And I said, "Well, yeah, that's ridiculous. What do you mean you can't die on the astral plane?" And he just kind of smirked and walked away from me. I didn't think much about that. I just thought, this is just some weirdo. Who cares? Next thing that happens is on the Afterlife Topics group, we have one of our members, Christine. Christine communicates with her husband through electronic voice phenomenon. The topic was brought up. Her husband told her that, and everything that, that seems to come through that communication has been consistent with everything else we say, higher dimensional life, fly, teleport, go wherever you want, change your shape, change your form, have a semi-non-physical existence. And yet she claims that on EVP, he said that, you can also die on the astral plane. And so don't kid yourself. There's still dangers to your physical existence, even on the astral spectrum. Again, I'm really resisting that. I think it's kind of ridiculous, and I don't put a lot of weight behind it. A couple weeks ago, I have an astral experience. I'm with my mom. I'm in her little trailer. It's where she lives. She lives like a travel trailer for fun. You can live anywhere. Maybe let's say you can live anywhere you want. My mom still likes to live in minimalist conditions. Good for her. So I'm in her trailer, and I asked my mom, it's like, "Look, I keep hearing that you can still die here." And she says, "Yeah, Cyrus, you can still die here." I'm like, that's ridiculous. How can that be? She says that, we still have it's not, basically what I always say, we're not phantasms or wisps of smoke that are invulnerable. She's like, "Listen, I have a flesh and blood body. There's different rules, but it can be destroyed, it can be hurt, and it can be killed." Again, I'm resisting this. So this leads me to deciding to go to as proven a resource for spirit communication as I can to get answers. So I went to ask Susan Filer, and Susan is she's the head of the Gilbert Sanctuary in Portsmouth, and I'm actually going to go be speaking there coming up in a couple of months in the UK. It is fully booked, but if you're in the UK watching this, you want to see me in London, I'll also be speaking or having a meetup event in London, so you can come there as well. But the Gilbert Sanctuary is a place where for a long time it has been a source of physical mediumship, spirit communication. It's non-profit. It's not there. People aren't there like, ripping people off. It's not full of fake physical mediums. It's full of people developing their skills as physical mediums and people communicating with spirits on probably one of the most, abundant levels of anywhere. So if there's anywhere, in my opinion, that there could be really, good information about any subject, it's, just to ask Susan, ask the folks at the Gilbert Sanctuary what they think. People who are in direct contact. Like they just pick up the telephone, get to talk to people on that side. Not literally, but maybe literally soon enough. And guess what? Susan serves it to me straight. Spirits coming through say that they can be killed. They can die on that side. What the heck? And so I took some notes from my conversation with Susan. And again, this is information that side doesn't really want to share with us. They don't want us to be carelessly talking about this, and they don't want this information to be causing people pain or grief or pushing people away from our connection to that side. So they are very careful about not sharing this stuff with the whole world. But here I am going to do it anyway, because I do believe in getting at the truth, and I think that we all have to be adults sometime. We have to look at things and, take things for what they are. And so, firstly, she says, people can arrive in realms of light, higher astral planes, higher dimensions, from lower realms. These lower realms can be horrific, and she says it best described by horror films like Hostel. It's the stuff they're doing to each other, stuff I can't say on this channel, or I will definitely not get monetized. And then once they are rescued and pulled out of those darker conditions, their astral bodies are often in pieces. I don't want to even say the word. You can see it on the screen. dismembered. And they don't just immediately repair themselves. They have to be rehabilitated until their form kind of regrows itself. It doesn't happen necessarily so easily. But on the same note, it's also possible for someone to be killed on the astral plane, maybe even aggressively, maybe even in these lower realms. Maybe there's a way to completely destroy somebody. Like if you use a bomb, you blow somebody up, you use an anti-gravity bomb or some high technology just to eradicate a bunch of people. It can happen. And then the astral shell, which is still, it's not as physical as our body, but it's still physical enough that it gets blown apart. Now, I always theorized that this could never be a permanent thing, or maybe which obviously it's not. But I would think that our consciousness is primary, and we could just immediately go into some new form. It shouldn't even matter, right? Not according to spirit sources. According to Susan, when the astral body is destroyed, what's left behind is a spirit essence. So you switch to a completely non-physical essence-based existence, kind of in how we would imagine a ghost to be if your physical astral body is destroyed. Now, I've had experiences on that side with truly non-physical entities in physical astral environments, and I've had people refer to them as ghosts. Like there is a, quote, ghost living in the house, and then I feel something come up to me, like a coldness or a feeling, or an apparition appears and disappears. And sometimes they're negative, or sometimes they're not, but it's like the literal representation of a ghost. And then people on that side telling me, yeah, there's a spirit in this house. It's people in the spirit world having problems with spirits. Pretty weird, right? And that this can be left behind if the astral body is eradicated. So what do you do then? So let's say you have a friend or loved one who's, some tragic accident happens, or they get blown to pieces. Their astral form is no longer there. So through the help of higher powers, the essence, the spirit of that person that is now completely non-physical, has to be taken in by the close friends and family members, where it will then dwell inside their personal space. So now, Uncle Bob had an accident at the Astral nuclear facility, and his astral body was blown to pieces. Or I don't know, Uncle Larry was, crossed over, and nobody could convince him that his disease actually had gone away, and so it persisted, and then it killed him a second time. What happens when this happens? Well, now their essence needs to be collected and taken into like your home or your house, where it's going to stay there until higher powers can begin working on the situation to work with the essence to the spirit of the person who has basically, had a second death happen, to help reform some kind of an astral body so that they can eventually come back. But this appears to be neither easy nor straightforward, and they are still leaving out more details about this whole topic and what happens. So spirits I've talked to on the during astral projection experiences, I mentioned the one guy, but I've come to think of it, I've brought the topic up a couple times. I remember mentioning this to a woman as well, and they seem quite convinced that people there on that side, like, they die, they don't get help, and they become ghosts on that side, floating around or being completely non-physical even in the astral environment. And no one is able to help them, or they don't want help, and then they just haunt around until they can have the astral body fixed. Theoretically, there could also be a death that can happen when you move into like a causal or a higher dimension. And then this is the voluntary kind of second death. And a poster on the Afterlife Topics group actually, refreshed my memory about the Autobiography of a Yogi book, where one of the yogis was discussing his role as a teacher in this area to help people finally shed their semi-physical astral body to become pure consciousness, but in a realm designed around pure consciousness. And I think the people who pass away, whose astral bodies are destroyed on the astral plane, they don't have the mental ability to graduate to those higher causal planes. So instead of being a non-physical, formless entity in those types of realms, they get kind of stuck hanging around the astral plane, and the astral residents perceive this as death, and that's why they tell us that on that side you can still die. What does that mean? Does that mean that there's maybe wars? Does that mean that you could be a victim of an attack? That you could be blown up? That your astral body could be destroyed? What does that mean during astral projection? Could your astral body be destroyed during astral projection, and then you can't go back to that side anymore in a physical, tangible way? How long does it take for higher powers to repair somebody whose astral body was destroyed, and then allows them to come back again? Why is that process complicated? How long does it take to be able to do that? Is this something any of us should be worried about? My advice is don't lose sleep over it. This is just information. Take it or leave it. But these are some pretty good sources, I think, especially coming out of Susan's Sanctuary saying these things. So this is stuff spirits are kind of telling us, and they're hesitant to do it. So don't let this stuff destroy your hopes. We just have to understand that an astral reality is still a semi-physical reality